Trudie Mason sitting in for Elias for the next few days. You probably notice this yourself if you go into the SAQ. Ever since the provincial government decided that the SAQ would not carry American-made booze, American products, there has been more shelf space devoted to all the other products, including some homegrown products. Certainly, Kev and I have noticed this when we go to the rum section looking for products for our tiki drinks. We've been seeing a lot more of a Montreal brand called Rosemont. And they have a number of different types of rums that we've tried. They've got a couple of different kinds of spiced rum. They've got pineapple rum. They've got vanilla rum. Lots of options there. One of the things now that they're seeing a lot of interest in is their whiskey, a Montreal-made whiskey. And here to tell us more about this development for the company is Alex Arpin, production manager at Distillerie de Montréal. Alex, thanks for joining us on CJAD.
How are you? Thanks.
So when did your whiskey become your fastest growing product? Is that relatively recently?
Well, since 2024, we saw a really big increase in sales. So obviously, like you mentioned, with the American products off the shelves, we gained a lot of shelf space, and that gave us a lot of a boost on our whiskeys. Yeah.
And at the moment, how many whiskeys are you offering?
How many products? I think we have two products based on whiskey. So we have our traditional Whisky de Montréal, which is a few-year aged whiskey that's produced here in Rosemont. And the other whiskey we produce a large quantity of is Abeille, so it's a honey-flavored whiskey that we also make in Hughes.
Is that made with a locally produced honey as well?
So our honey comes from Miel d'Anisette, which is a small producer in the Laurentians.
That is wonderful to hear, actually, that these locally produced products are gaining some traction. Are whiskey drinkers in Quebec open to the idea of giving locally produced products a try, in your view?
I think we saw that in the beginning of the pandemic, actually, which gave us our first really big sales boost. People were really into encouraging everything was local. And if we're talking about our whiskey specifically, it's really hard to be more local than us. Most of the products that go into our whiskey are like within a walking distance of the distillery. We're in the middle of a small industrial sector in Rosemont. We get our mash from a neighborhood brewery that's called Beauregard, which is a block and a half away from here. Our yeasts are coming from l'Allemand in Hochelaga. And everything else that we put in our whiskeys is really, really close by. So I think there's definitely a big positive for us in having local products, and I think people really enjoy that.
And good old Montreal tap water?
Yeah, well, we have our water from the city, but we have a large charcoal filtration system that gets off any of the metals that are left, and we have a really neutral water source.
And the feedback that you're getting about the effort to get traction in the whiskey sector, what are you hearing from, I don't want to call them whiskey snobs, but I'm going to, because there are wine snobs, there are probably rum snobs too, but people who really are deeply invested in flavor profiles and things like that. What kind of feedback are you getting about Whisky de Montréal and the Abeille product too?
Well, I think, first of all, I make a difference between like locally Canadian whiskeys and like, let's say Irish whiskeys or a Scotch. These are like products that are similar and produced the same way, but I don't have the same, if I'm buying a Scotch, I'm not expecting something that I'm going to get out of a Canadian whiskey. So the reaction we've been having from the whiskeys we produce here is it's really positive. It's a nice sipping whiskey, but it's also at a price point that if you want to make a cocktail with it, it's not hurting you. Like, you're not buying a $75 bottle to make your whiskey sour. We've had mostly really good results from people. Even people that are just into Scotch and won't taste anything else, the people I've had taste them are surprised and interested. So we've had really good feedback.
How difficult is it to make a decent whiskey?
That's a really good question, actually. I think it's not difficult. I think what's difficult is maybe finding a flavor profile that people are interested in spending money on. That's the hardest part. We spend a long time developing the mash that we get from our brewers, and we spend a lot of time also selecting the barrels they're aged in, so that brings a big part of it. So I'd say what's most important to produce a good whiskey is copper stills make a big difference. So the materials the stills are made of will make a big difference on your end product and how they're built. The barrels they're aged in make a big difference. So I think it's developing a program to get the flavors you want out of it. That the difficult part is. Once that's set in place, it's just keeping the production up with our sales and being ahead of time.
What kind of barrels do you use?
So we basically have 3 types of barrels. We use new French oak and new American oak. We have maybe 12 different profiles of barrels, so they have different chars. The char is like how they're treated on the inside, how they're toasted. If they're very, very toasted, burned on the inside, then very dark, or if they're maybe a little lighter toast, they'll have a different flavor profile. And after that, so they'll spend 2 years in those French and American oak, new barrels. And then after 2 years, when they start getting very oaky, we'll transfer them into barrels that have been used for bourbon, so ex-bourbon barrels for stocking.
And that flavor profile I mentioned, what are the tasting notes for Whiskey de Montréal? How would you describe the flavor to fans of whiskey?
I would say we're how can I say, we're sort of a mid-range whiskey. So we have a nice little caramel note. There's a lot of grain that comes through as well. There's nothing overly strong in our flavor, so we're not going towards something that's very peaty or very grainy or very caramel. We have a nice sort of mid-range flavor profile.
I noticed that in terms of a bay, you don't use any, you use Quebec-produced honey to begin with, but you don't use any caramel flavor or things like that. Is that appreciated in that type of product? You know, do people notice, in other words, do people notice?
I don't think it's the first thing off the bat. I think it's something we like to talk about, and because we're proud of our product, it's something that we sort of try to show off. It's like the color that's in the bottle comes straight from the barrels and the wood aging. It's not something that's caramel, like colored with caramel or any other coloring products. I think people appreciate hearing it because there's sort of a movement in the industry towards less chemical flavors and more natural products. So I think it's definitely a selling point.
I want to ask a quick question about your rum, too, because as I mentioned, my husband and I are big into tiki drinks, so we're always looking for interesting rums for tiki cocktails, which tend to be quite complicated, you know. So I wanted to ask about your spiced rum, because you have a couple. You have your spiced rum, then you have your L'Apres-ski spiced rum. Do you also use that approach with those products, too, that you want to stick to natural flavors and not kind of go straight to the artificial side of things?
Absolutely. So those 2 products you mentioned they're sort of interesting to make for us. They're our biggest sellers, honestly. Our spiced rums, we sell much more rum than we do whiskey. So especially the sort of spiced rum, which is based on cranberries. We have dried cranberries that soak for a couple of weeks to get some color out of them. So the red color you're going to see in the bottle is from the cranberries. The rum we make is also from the barrels from our barrel house in the basement. And the Après-ski, which is a seasonal product, maybe a little bit harder to find, but it's my favorite spiced rum we make. It's much more on the side of cinnamon and ginger. So the ginger is actually fermented and distilled here, and we get a ginger concentrate out of it. So it's very, very strong. It's almost spicy, like a ginger extracted by the grocery store, but we make it in-house. And then it has cinnamon that we buy from Philippe de Vienne at the Jean Talon market that's steeped in it for about 2-3 weeks to get the cinnamon side of it. So it's all produced in-house with these products that we buy locally.
That warms my heart. That warms my heart, because so many products, when you look at the shelf and there's all kinds of flavored stuff, so often, you know, in tiki circles, for example, a lot of spiced rum is dismissed as just having artificial vanilla flavor added to it. So to hear that you're actually sourcing things like ginger or cinnamon and using the real thing in there, I think that's a big deal that should be celebrated, and it belongs to us because it's made in Montreal. So
it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear these comments. We don't often have. I'm working on the production side a lot, so it's not often that I get comments and feedback like that. So I really appreciate hearing that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the interview, and good luck with Whiskey de Montréal.
Thank you very much, Trudie. It was very nice talking to you.
Alex Arpin, production manager at the Distillerie de Montréal.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.